Director Ji-ho Kim sat in the command chair of the Earth transport vessel Serenity reading through thick files that contained everything humanity knew about the Vorthan-Kalari conflict. The files were heavy and filled with photographs, tactical reports, and cultural analysis that had taken Earth's intelligence services 3 years to compile. The war between the two alien species had been raging for 37 years, making it one of the longest continuous conflicts in recent galactic history. What had started as a simple border dispute over mining rights had grown into a full-scale interstellar war that had consumed entire star systems and killed millions of beings on both sides. Kim closed the file he was reading and looked around the ship's small bridge. The Serenity was not an impressive vessel by galactic standards. It was a converted civilian transport with basic life support systems and minimal defensive capabilities. The ship's crew consisted of only 12 people, and their mission equipment fit into 3 storage containers. By comparison, the peace talks they were heading toward would involve thousands of diplomats, military advisors, and support staff from both warring civilizations. The neutral station where the negotiations would take place was larger than most Earth cities and had been specifically constructed for this historic peace conference. Psychology specialist Sujin Lee sat at a nearby workstation, studying detailed profiles of the alien species they would soon encounter. She had spent the last 6 months learning everything possible about Vorthan and Kalari psychology, social structures, and cultural patterns. Director, she said without looking up from her computer screen, both species are highly hierarchical societies. They organize themselves into strict social ranks based on military achievement and personal strength. They respect authority figures and respond well to displays of confidence and power. And they respond poorly to weakness, uncertainty, or any behavior they interpret as submission, Lee replied. Both cultures view compromise as defeat and negotiation as a form of warfare conducted with words instead of weapons. Captain Woojin Park, who served as the mission security chief, turned from his position at the navigation console. He was a thin man with sharp eyes who had spent 15 years in Earth's military before transferring to the diplomatic corps. I have to ask the obvious question, Director, Park said, frowning as he studied the tactical reports. Why would 2 warrior species specifically request humans as mediators for their peace talks? We have no military reputation in galactic politics. Our space fleet is tiny. Most alien species barely know we exist. Kim set down his files and walked over to the main view screen, which showed the stars streaming past as they traveled toward the peace conference. Captain Park, that's exactly why they requested us. We're seen as completely harmless. Harmless how? Security specialist Yoon Jung looked up from her own workstation where she had been reviewing intelligence reports on both alien militaries. To the galaxy's major powers, humans are like friendly neighbors who sometimes help with small problems. We're not threatening enough to make either side suspicious of our motives. The perfect neutral observers, added Communications Officer Dongwoo Bae. Too weak to have hidden agendas, too insignificant to benefit from the outcome of the negotiations. Dr. Lee saved her work and turned to face the rest of the team. Both the Vorthans and Kalari agreed to human mediation because they believe we'll sit quietly in the corner, take notes, and occasionally offer gentle suggestions for compromise. They think we're harmless peacekeepers who just want everyone to get along. Kim nodded, but his expression was not that of a harmless peacekeeper. There was something in his eyes that suggested he was thinking about things the others could not see, planning moves in a game that the alien species did not even know they were playing. What the galaxy doesn't understand, Kim said quietly, is that Earth's diplomatic corps isn't really a diplomatic organization. The bridge fell silent. Several team members looked at each other with expressions of understanding and slight concern. What are we then? Asked Captain Park. We are a psychological warfare unit disguised as a peacekeeping service, Kim replied matter-of-factly. Every person on this ship has been trained in advanced psychological manipulation, social dominance techniques, and mental pressure tactics. Dr. Lee nodded in agreement. The galaxy invited us to mediate this conflict because they think humans are gentle creatures who solve problems through kindness and mutual understanding. But that's not what we are, Kim continued. What we actually are is much more dangerous. Tactical specialist Hyun Woo Cho, who had been quietly reviewing the mission parameters, spoke up from his position near the rear of the bridge. Director, are you saying that our entire diplomatic strategy is based on deception? Not deception, Kim corrected. Misdirection. The alien species look at us and see what they expect to see, weak, peaceful beings who pose no threat to anyone. They don't look deeper. They don't notice the details that would tell them what we really are. Which is Kim turned away from the view screen and looked directly at each member of his team. His gaze was steady, unblinking, and somehow predatory in a way that made everyone slightly uncomfortable even though they were all humans. "We are apex predators," he said simply. "We evolved as pack hunters on one of the most dangerous planets in known space. We learned to bring down creatures larger and stronger than ourselves through persistence, intelligence, and psychological dominance." The humans approaching the neutral station were not the harmless peacekeepers the galaxy expected. They were something far more dangerous, predators trained in the art of mental domination, and they were about to meet prey that had no idea they were being hunted. The peace talks were scheduled to begin aboard Neutral Station 1, a massive diplomatic facility that had been specially constructed for this historic meeting between the warring Vorthan and Kalari species. The station floated in empty space at the exact midpoint between the two empires' territories, its white and gold halls designed to inspire calm and peaceful cooperation. Director Ji-ho Kim walked through the station's corridors toward the main conference chamber, followed by his small team of human specialists. The hallways were filled with alien delegates, security personnel, and media representatives from across the galaxy. Everyone was excited about the possibility of ending a war that had lasted nearly 4 decades. The human delegation looked completely out of place among the impressive alien representatives. While the Vorthans wore elaborate military uniforms covered with medals and honors, and the Kalari delegation dressed in expensive robes that showed their high social status, the humans wore simple black suits that could have been purchased at any clothing store on Earth. Both alien delegations had brought massive teams of negotiators, military advisors, legal experts, and cultural specialists. The Vorthans had over 200 representatives, while the Kalari had brought nearly 300. Each delegation occupied an entire section of the station and had arrived in ships that were works of art as much as they were vehicles. The human team consisted of exactly 7 people, and they had arrived in a converted transport ship that most galactic citizens would consider embarrassingly primitive. When Director Kim entered the main conference chamber, both delegations were already seated at their respective tables. The room was enormous, with a ceiling that showed real-time views of the stars above and walls decorated with symbols of peace from dozens of different cultures. The chamber had been arranged according to traditional galactic diplomatic protocols. The Vorthan delegation sat on one side of the room, the Kalari on the other, with a neutral zone in the center where the human mediators were expected to sit quietly and observe. Director Kim did not go to the designated neutral seating area. Instead, he walked slowly around the room, looking directly at each delegate in turn. But there was something unusual about the way he looked at them. His gaze was steady, focused, and completely unblinking. War Leader Vextho of the Vorthan delegation was a massive creature with thick armor-like skin and 4 arms that ended in sharp claws. He had commanded Vorthan forces for over 20 years and had never lost a battle. He was not easily intimidated. But as Director Kim's unblinking stare fixed on him, Vextho felt something he had not experienced in decades, the primitive fear response that came from being watched by a natural predator. "Human observer," Vextho said, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed, "please take your designated position and remain silent while we begin the formal negotiations according to established protocols." Kim continued staring directly into Vextho's eyes without blinking. His expression never changed. He did not move. He simply stood there, watching, like a hunter evaluating potential prey. "No," Kim said quietly, his voice so soft that everyone in the chamber had to strain to hear him. But despite its quiet tone, there was something in his voice that made every alien in the room feel suddenly uncomfortable. The word hung in the air for several seconds. Kim continued his unblinking stare, focusing on War Leader Vextho's face with the intensity of a laser beam. Seconds passed. 10 seconds. 20 seconds. 30 seconds of complete, unblinking eye contact that never wavered. "You will sit," Kim said finally, his voice still quiet but carrying an authority that seemed to come from somewhere deep and primitive. "You will listen carefully to everything that is said. You will speak only when I indicate that it is appropriate for you to do so." Something primal and ancient in War Leader Vextho's brain recognized the tone of voice and the unwavering stare. Every instinct developed over millions of years of evolution told him that he was in the presence of something dangerous, something that hunted creatures like him for food. Without consciously deciding to do so, Vextho sat down immediately. Psychology specialist Sujin Lee had been watching this exchange carefully, and she was recording everything on her specialized equipment. Her instruments were measuring heart rates, stress hormones, brain wave patterns, and other physiological responses from both alien delegations. "Director," she whispered into her communication device, speaking in Korean so the aliens could not understand, their stress indicators are going through the ceiling. Both species are showing extreme fear responses to sustained human eye contact. How extreme? Kim asked quietly, never taking his eyes off the alien delegates. They're responding to us the same way prey animals respond to natural predators, Lee whispered back. Their bodies are preparing for either fight or flight responses. But the social pressure of the diplomatic setting is preventing them from acting on those instincts. Dr. Yijin Choi, who had been observing the Kalari delegation, noticed that they were showing identical responses. The normally proud and aggressive warriors were shifting nervously in their seats, avoiding direct eye contact with the humans, and speaking in hushed tones. Captain Woojin Park moved slowly around the chamber, positioning himself where both delegations could see him. Like Director Kim, he maintained constant, unblinking eye contact with whoever he was looking at. The truth was becoming clear to the human team. The alien species had made a critical error when they requested human mediators. They had invited what they thought were harmless peacekeepers to oversee their negotiations. What they had actually done was invite Earth's most effective psychological dominance specialists to take control of their peace process. Director Ji-ho Kim had spent 15 years learning the art of psychological manipulation, but he had never had subjects as responsive as the alien delegates sitting before him in the conference chamber. Every technique that had been developed through decades of human behavioral research was working better than anyone had expected. The traditional approach to galactic diplomacy involved hours of formal presentations, cultural exchanges, and careful relationship building. Each side would present their position using elaborate ceremonies and ancient protocols designed to show respect for their opponents while maintaining their own dignity. Kim ignored all of these established traditions completely. Instead of sitting in the designated neutral observer area, he positioned himself directly in front of the main negotiation table where both delegations could see him clearly. He stood perfectly still, his hands clasped behind his back, and began doing something that no galactic diplomat had ever done during formal peace talks. He stared. Not the polite, respectful attention that diplomats usually paid to speakers, but the focused, unblinking gaze of a predator watching potential prey. His eyes moved slowly from one delegate to another, studying each alien's face, body language, and reactions with the intensity of a hunter deciding which target to take down first. War Leader Vex though was the first to experience the full effect of Kim's psychological pressure. The Vorthan commander was used to being the most intimidating presence in any room. His species had evolved as apex predators on their own world, and his personal combat record included victories over some of the galaxy's most dangerous warriors. But as Director Kim's unblinking stare fixed on him, Vex though felt something he had not experienced since childhood, the primitive fear that came from being watched by something higher on the food chain. Human observer, Vex though began, his voice carrying less authority than usual, the Vorthan delegation is prepared to begin formal presentations according to established galactic diplomatic protocols. Please take your designated. No, Kim said quietly. The single word cut through Vex though's speech like a blade. Kim's eyes never moved away from the Vorthan leader's face, never blinked, never showed any expression except calm, patient attention. The silence that followed stretched for 30 full seconds. Every alien in the chamber could feel the psychological pressure building as Kim continued his unblinking stare. War Leader Vex though, who had stared down enemy commanders across dozens of battlefields, found himself unable to maintain eye contact with the human. You will sit, Kim said finally, his voice still quiet but somehow carrying absolute authority. You will listen carefully to everything that is said in this chamber. You will speak only when I indicate that it is appropriate for you to do so. Something deep and primitive in War Leader Vex though's brain recognized the tone and the unblinking stare. Every survival instinct developed over millions of years of evolution told him that he was in the presence of an apex predator, something that hunted creatures like him. Without consciously deciding to do so, Vex though sat down in his chair immediately. Psychology specialist Yoon Jang had been watching this exchange with professional interest. She stood up from her position and walked slowly toward the Kalari delegation, her own predatory stare fixed on their lead negotiator. Unlike traditional diplomats who moved with careful, respectful gestures designed to avoid offense, Jang moved with the fluid confidence of a hunter approaching cornered prey. Her steps were deliberate and silent, and she never took her eyes off the Kalari delegates. You're warriors, she said, speaking directly to Commander Thex VA of the Kalari forces. Your entire culture is built around strength, combat, and military achievement. So stop pretending to be polite diplomats and act like what you really are. Captain Woojin Park had been trained in tactical positioning and psychological intimidation. He began moving slowly around the chamber, positioning himself where both delegations could see him but never in the same place for more than a few moments. The effect was subtle but powerful. The alien delegates found themselves constantly aware of his presence, constantly tracking his movement, constantly feeling watched from different angles. It was the same psychological pressure that pack hunters use to keep prey animals nervous and off balance. "The Galactic Council isn't here," Park said, his voice calm but carrying an undertone of threat. "Your fancy protocols aren't here. Your cultural traditions aren't here. We are here. And we're going to solve this problem our way." Dr. Sujin Lee had been monitoring the physiological responses of both alien delegations using advanced sensors that could measure heart rate, stress hormones, and brain activity without the subjects knowing they were being watched. "Director," she whispered into her communication device, speaking in Korean so the aliens could not understand her, "their fear responses are extreme. Both species are showing biological stress patterns identical to prey animals being stalked by natural predators." The truth was becoming undeniably clear. The alien species had evolved as herd creatures, school swimmers, and colony insects. They had survival instincts that responded to threats in predictable ways. But humans had evolved as pack hunters with forward-facing eyes, persistent tracking behaviors, and psychological dominance strategies designed to intimidate prey. The Vorthans and Kalari had not invited neutral mediators to their peace talks. They had accidentally invited apex predators who used psychological pressure instead of physical force to dominate their targets. And those predators were about to demonstrate why human diplomacy was so effective. Word of the successful Vorthan-Kalari peace mediation spread through galactic diplomatic circles faster than anyone had expected. Within 2 weeks of the agreement being signed, Earth's diplomatic corps began receiving urgent requests for human observers from conflicts across known space. Director Ji-ho Kim sat in his office aboard the newly established Human Diplomatic Command Station, looking at a holographic map that showed requests coming in from dozens of star systems. Each red dot represented a different conflict where alien species were specifically asking for human mediation services. "Sir," reported Administrative Coordinator In Young Park, walking into his office with a tablet full of new requests, "we've received 47 formal requests for mediation services in the past month. That's more requests than Earth's entire diplomatic service handled in the previous 10 years combined." Kim studied the map, noting that the requests covered everything from border disputes to trade wars to territorial conflicts. Each request specifically asked for the same type of neutral human oversight that had been so successful in ending the Vorthan-Kalari War. "Assemble specialized teams," Kim ordered. "Each team will be led by someone trained in advanced predator protocols." Team Alpha was assigned to resolve a trade war between the Merchant Confederation and the Galactic Commerce Guild. The conflict had been disrupting interstellar shipping for 18 months, with both sides refusing to compromise on shipping rates and route access. Mediator Sung-Minute Oh led his team aboard the neutral trade station where negotiations were being held. Like Director Kim, Oh had been trained in psychological dominance techniques, but his specialty was using silence as a weapon. The merchant delegates expected long discussions about profit margins and market access rights. Instead, Oh simply walked into the negotiation room and stood perfectly still, making sustained eye contact with each delegate while saying absolutely nothing. The effect was immediate and disturbing. The alien merchants, accustomed to constant chatter and rapid-fire negotiations, found themselves increasingly uncomfortable in the presence of a human who simply watched them without speaking. After 20 minutes of silence, the lead merchant representative cracked under the psychological pressure. "What do you want from us?" he asked desperately. "Fair shipping rates for everyone," Oh replied calmly. "Which you will agree to within the hour." They agreed in 30 minutes. Team Beta faced a more complex challenge. Negotiator Hai Jin Yoon was assigned to resolve a territorial dispute between the Crystal Empire and the Void Nomads that had been going on for over a century. Both sides had prepared elaborate legal arguments and historical claims that they expected to present over several months of careful negotiations. Yoon used a different approach. She entered the negotiation chamber and positioned herself at the center of the room where both delegations could see her clearly. Then she began doing something that made every alien present deeply uncomfortable. She stood perfectly still, like a statue, while maintaining direct eye contact with speakers from both delegations. She never moved, never looked away, never showed any change in expression. She simply watched and waited. The psychological effect was devastating. Delegates who had been prepared to speak for hours found themselves rushing through their presentations, desperate to escape the intensity of her unwavering attention. Complex legal arguments that should have taken days to present were compressed into brief summaries. "We'll accept border demarcation according to human recommendations," both sides announced within 6 hours. Cultural specialist Kyung-ho Shin had been assigned to document the patterns of success across all human mediation missions. His findings were remarkable and slightly disturbing. Director, he reported during a secure communication session, every single alien species we encounter shows identical stress responses to sustained human attention. It doesn't matter if they evolved as land creatures, ocean dwellers, or spaceborne entities. They all react the same way to our stare patterns. How do you explain that? Universal prey-animal responses, Shin replied. Across all evolutionary paths, species that were hunted developed the same instincts for recognizing and responding to predators. Dr. Sujin Lee had been conducting detailed biological analysis of alien responses to human psychological techniques. Her research revealed something that explained why Earth's diplomatic methods were so effective. It's not just the staring, she observed during a team meeting. Humans exhibit multiple classic apex predator behaviors during negotiations. Our forward-facing eyes are designed for tracking prey. Our persistence and refusal to break eye contact signals hunting behavior. Our calm, patient demeanor while maintaining visual focus triggers every survival instinct that prey species have developed. Intelligence Officer Tai-ho Kwon was responsible for tracking the overall success rate of human diplomatic missions. His reports showed a pattern of success that was almost unbelievable. Director, he announced during their monthly review meeting, we have been formally requested to mediate 43 different conflicts in the past 2 months. Every single mediation has ended in complete success, with terms that favor human interests. Define complete success, Kim requested. Every conflict has been resolved in less than 1 week. Every agreement includes clauses that expand human influence in the region. Every settlement requires ongoing human oversight to ensure compliance. The scope of what was happening was becoming clear. The galaxy had not simply hired human diplomats to help with a few difficult negotiations. They had unknowingly invited psychological dominance specialists to take control of their most important political processes. And those specialists were using evolved predatory behaviors to systematically establish human authority across galactic civilization. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened 8 months after the first human mediation success, when the galaxy's major civilizations finally understood the true scope of what had happened to them. The meeting was held aboard the Grand Assembly Station, the largest diplomatic facility in known space, with representatives from over 60 different species demanding immediate answers about what they were calling the human problem. Director Ji-ho Kim walked into the massive assembly chamber to face an audience that no longer looked at him with the polite respect they had shown during earlier encounters. The delegates were angry, frightened, and desperate for solutions to a situation that had grown far beyond their control. The chamber itself was designed to intimidate visitors with its enormous size and elaborate decorations. The ceiling stretched so high that clouds formed near the top, and the walls were covered with artistic representations of galactic unity and cooperation. But today, the atmosphere was anything but cooperative. Chairman Veltar of the Galactic Mediation Council stood at the central podium, his usually calm demeanor replaced with obvious agitation. His species, the Ethereal Collective, prided themselves on logical thinking and emotional control. But even he was showing signs of stress as he addressed the assembled delegates. We are here today to address serious concerns about Earth's diplomatic methods, he announced, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. Multiple species have reported that human mediators are using unconventional and potentially harmful techniques during peace negotiations. You're not diplomats, accused Supreme Commander Zethval of the Military Alliance, pointing an accusing finger at Director Kim. You're using psychological intimidation and mental manipulation to force agreements. This is not how civilized beings conduct negotiations. Director Kim looked directly at Commander Zethval and began doing the thing that had made him so effective in every previous negotiation. He stared at the alien commander without blinking, his gaze steady and unwavering, for exactly 15 seconds. The chamber fell completely silent as every delegate watched the psychological pressure build between the human and the military commander. Zethval, despite his impressive rank and combat experience, found himself increasingly uncomfortable under Kim's predatory attention. And it's working, Kim said finally, his voice quiet but carrying to every corner of the enormous chamber. This isn't civilized negotiation, protested Trade Minister Fluxare of the Commerce Collective, her voice rising with frustration. Proper diplomacy requires months of careful cultural exchange, mutual respect, and gradual relationship building. Behavioral specialist Jin Lee stood up from her position in the human delegation and began walking slowly around the chamber. Like Director Kim, She maintained constant, unblinking eye contact with whoever she was looking at, moving with the fluid confidence of a predator surveying its territory. Civilized species, she said, her voice carrying the same quiet authority as Kim's, spend decades arguing over problems that we solve in hours. Your careful cultural exchanges and gradual relationship building haven't prevented wars, ended conflicts, or created lasting peace. Because you're using intimidation tactics, accused Chairman Veltar. Captain Woojin Park moved to stand behind the main group of delegates, positioning himself where everyone could see him. When he smiled, he deliberately showed his teeth in an expression that was friendly by human standards but deeply threatening to prey species. We're using effectiveness, he said simply. The results speak for themselves. Dr. Yijin Choi activated a holographic display that showed detailed research data about alien psychological responses to human behavior patterns. The information she presented would change how the galaxy understood both humans and themselves forever. Every species represented in this chamber, she announced, evolved as prey animals. Herd creatures, school swimmers, colony insects. Your survival instincts are designed to recognize and respond to predator threats. The delegates looked at each other with growing understanding and alarm. And humans? Asked Chairman Veltar, though his voice suggested he already knew the answer would not be pleasant. Pack hunters, Director Kim replied, his unblinking stare sweeping across the assembled aliens. We evolved as cooperative predators on one of the most dangerous planets in known space. We learned to bring down creatures larger and stronger than ourselves through persistence, intelligence, and psychological pressure. Strategic analyst Jun Ho-on stood up and activated his own display, showing a galactic map covered with red indicators. You've been systematically inviting apex predators to oversee your most important negotiations. Every agreement signed under human mediation gives us exactly what we wanted while making you think it was your own idea. Intelligence Officer Tai-Ho Kwan announced the numbers that made several delegates gasp in shock. Human mediators are currently being requested to oversee conflicts in 37 galactic sectors. Each successful mediation expands human administrative authority and strategic influence. The scope of the situation was becoming clear to everyone in the chamber. The galaxy had not hired a few human diplomats to help with difficult negotiations. They had voluntarily submitted to systematic psychological domination by a species of apex predators. But you told us you were peaceful, protested Supreme Commander Zethval, his voice carrying desperation rather than authority. Captain Park's smile widened, and he deliberately maintained unblinking eye contact with the commander for several seconds before responding. We are peaceful. We just prefer the kind of peace where everyone does exactly what we tell them to do. How do we reverse this situation? Demanded Trade Minister Flux Ara. How do we reclaim control over our own negotiation processes? Director Kim's unblinking stare fixed on her with the intensity of a predator selecting its next target. You don't reverse it. You invited apex predators to manage your conflicts. Now we manage you. The emergency assembly ended with no solutions, no resolutions, and no hope of undoing what the galaxy had done to itself. As the delegates filed out of the chamber, most of them carefully avoiding eye contact with the human delegation, the truth was finally clear to everyone. Earth had not sent ambassadors to help with galactic diplomacy. They had sent predators who never blinked. Cultural specialist Shin observed quietly as they prepared to leave. They finally realized we're not diplomats. Dr. Choi watched her instruments, which showed that several alien species were already preparing new requests for human mediation services for conflicts that did not even exist yet. Director, they're actually asking us to dominate them now. Kim's predatory smile never wavered as he looked out at the galaxy that had voluntarily submitted to human control. The galaxy learned too late that when Earth sends negotiators, we don't send people who ask politely for what we want. We send people who make you want to give us everything, and you never realize we're hunting you until it's already over. *The end*.